Hi there, I'm Joel. This is my first speed rigging animation challenge. I'm rigging this character that you see on screen now. It took me an hour, and over the next 15 minutes you'll see my process. Maybe some of you will find it useful, but I'd also like to take the opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and where I grew up. I'm 15. I've been animating since I was 12. I was born in New Zealand, but I grew up in Afghanistan. My parents were aid and development workers, helping trafficked women and children. My sister and I loved growing up in Afghanistan. It's a beautifully rugged country, and the people are so loving and hospitable. This character is based on my first ever pet, Kevin, although I used to call him Agent K, as I was a huge fan of Phineas and Ferb and their pet platypus Perry, also known as Agent P. I've always loved cartoons and comics, and now I'm really enjoying making them for myself. So back to the rig. I started with a simple head. You'll see that often I'll try one design and I'll take it back and I'll try something else. This trial and error approach seems to really work for me. You'll see that I was trying out some different types of eyes. I end up going with a beady look, which I think works out well. You'll see that I drew the different elements of the beak so that I could rig it so it would open. I don't end up doing this, but it wouldn't be too difficult to add that functionality. Although I added some tweaks afterwards, I tried to keep the rig relatively simple so I could do it within the hour. You can see that initially, I made Agent K's wings simply closed. Later, you'll see that I make an open or flying version, which I will alternate between the two versions with a switch layer. I remember the day when we got our budgies. In Kabul, where we lived, there was a special bazaar where you could go buy pets, and we asked a local friend to go pick them up for us. That was an exciting day. My sister had a blue budgie called Sapura, and mine, like the video, was green. Growing up in another culture has made me realize that things, even like colour, are subjective. For example, both our budgies were considered the same colour, sheen. Sometimes it was best to specify that you wanted sky green if you wanted a shade of blue. Living in Kabul, I also learnt to appreciate the subtle shades of colour. It can be a harsh, rocky, and dust-filled city with everything seemingly a colour of beige. But when it would rain, which was reasonably rare, you would look up into the hills and mountains and notice that green could also be a shade of beige. Sometimes, to escape the dust of the city, we would drive up into the mountains to a place called Pahman, where you would notice that the beige turned to true green, with beautiful rivers and fruiting trees all around. With 40 years of war, Afghanistan has seen many orchards be cut down for fuel and heating. Only 2% of the country remains forested. Hopefully, with growing peace, we will start to see the greening of Afghanistan once again. Another thing our family was involved in was starting up a parabolic solar stove company. These were much like reflective satellite dishes that cooked food. We did this basically to provide a safe company to employ some of the recovering trafficked women, teaching them the soft skills required for employment. But the neat thing about the stoves is that it was a win-win for everybody, including the environment. most people could save up to 70% of their gas bill. With over 300 days of sunny weather each year, one thing that Afghanistan is rich in is solar resources. One of my favourite snacks growing up in Kabul was sold at the bazaar by street vendors. This was hot chips wrapped in warm naan. My sister preferred parakai, or bulani, which is fried bread with vegetables inside. One thing I remember is that the bread seemed to never be wasted. It was such a staple and I guess a symbol of life. If it's no longer required for the family, you either soaked the stale bread and fed it to the animals, or simply gave it to the birds. Here I'm rigging the open wings. For these, I add additional bones in between the main skeleton bones. I use the angle control bone option under the bone constraint menu to achieve this. I use the far wing bone to control each central bone, each with a decreasing influence as the bones approach the body. These extra bones are good for creating objects that fold, like a wing or a paper fan. You may notice that the gradients in the neck and the tufts that connect the legs to the body do not move with their respective shapes. This is because I used point binding, so only the points move and not the gradients. To fix this, I used layer binding instead. We lived in two main areas of Kabul, in the south towards the palace and in Pulachaki on the outskirts. Both of these places are featured in the film The Breadwinner, a movie by Cartoon Saloon. It's an amazing film, and what I find interesting is the fact that most people who watch it find it sad and dramatic, but I find it nostalgic, and I get a little homesick. Either way, I would recommend watching it if you haven't already. In Afghanistan, the weather varies incredibly over the seasons. In Kabul, during the summer, it could get up to 40 degrees Celsius, which is over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. In winter, on the other hand, it could get down to negative 20 degrees Celsius, below zero in Fahrenheit. Once we came home from a holiday to find the water in our toilets frozen. Here, I'm making a simple head turn. I use an action that's controlled by a smartphone. After the hour had finished, I made some tweaks to the character, including adding eyelids for blinking and an up and down head control. Here's the final result. I hope to make more of these speed rigs and animations soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll leave you with one final word. Refrigerator.